Hello, you're watching A News. I'm Dilek Tuna. Here are your top stories. The Coalition of the Willing urges more pressure on Russia to end the war in Ukraine as they meet in London. The United States imposes sanctions on Colombia's president and his family members over drug trade allegations. And world leaders arrive in Kuala Lumpur for the 47th ASEAN Leaders Summit. Good afternoon. Leaders of the Coalition of the Willing met in London to coordinate new pressure on Russia. The talks focused on sanctions, long-range weapons for Ukraine, and how to use frozen Russian assets to fund Kyiv's defence.
The Coalition of the Willing meeting in London brought together leaders and representatives from Ukraine, Britain, Denmark, the Netherlands and NATO, with others joining online. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer hosted the talks, calling on allies to move quickly on a plan to use frozen Russian assets to strengthen Ukraine's position in any future peace negotiations. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky urged partners to expand sanctions to all Russian oil companies, its shadow fleet and oil terminals, arguing that economic pressure must accompany military support.
The more losses Putin suffers on his own territory, the fewer assaults he can carry out on the front line, and the faster he will agree to meaningful diplomacy. That is why we are working to secure Tomahawk cruise missiles, additional Storm Shadow missiles, other capabilities.
NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte said the new US sanctions on Russia's two biggest oil firms are already having an impact.
In Ukraine, Putin is gaining little ground on the battlefield. And where there are marginal gains, they are coming at a huge price. Hundreds of thousands of Russians are dying for Putin's deluded aggression. Ukraine continues defending itself bravely, and our support to them is working. The truth is that Putin is running out of money, troops and ideas. President Trump said it very well. They should stop where they are now.
Dutch Prime Minister Dick Schoof echoed that the European Union should mirror US sanctions, while Starmer said there was absolute clarity that work on using frozen Russian funds must move forward without delay. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen backed the idea of making Russia pay for the damage it has caused.
The idea of letting Russia pay for the damages they have done in Ukraine is the only way forward. Of course, there are some technical questions that has to be answered. There are a lot of details that we have to work on. But first and foremost, this is a political decision and a political choice.
The talks followed the US decision to impose sanctions on Russian oil giants and to postpone a planned Trump-Putin meeting in Budapest.
Meanwhile, one person has been killed and tens others injured after Russian missiles and drones struck Kyiv overnight. The city's military administration says explosions damaged cars, shattered windows and left a large crater in a residential courtyard. A kindergarten was also hit, sparking several fires. Ukraine's Air Force says it intercepted 4 of 9 missiles and 50 of 62 drones launched across the country. Putin's special envoy Kirill Dmitriev has confirmed he's in the United States for a long-planned meeting. Proof, he says, that dialogue between Moscow and Washington continues despite new US sanctions on Russia's top oil firms. Dmitriev said he believes Russia, the US and Ukraine are quite close to a diplomatic solution to end the war, and criticised European attempts to derail direct talks between Presidents Putin and Trump. He warned that US sanctions would only drive up American fuel prices.
We will continue discussions with the American side. We will continue the dialogue with the American side, clearly communicating Russia's position. Russia's position is that Russia's national interests must be respected, and that these sanctions and unfriendly measures will have absolutely no impact on the Russian economy. They will simply lead to higher prices at gas stations in the US because oil prices have already risen and will continue to rise.
The United States has imposed sanctions on Colombian President Gustavo Petro, accusing him of allowing drug cartels to thrive and fueling a surge in cocaine production. The move marks a sharp escalation in tensions between Washington and one of its longtime Latin American allies. President Donald Trump called Petro an illegal drug leader after Petro accused the US of murder over recent military strikes on vessels in the Caribbean. The Colombian president dismissed the accusations as lies, saying his government has seized record amounts of cocaine. The sanctions freeze any US assets linked to Petro, his family and senior officials. In other news, US President Donald Trump says he has no intention to meet with Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney during the ASEAN summit in Kuala Lumpur. His remarks came hours after Carney said that Canada was ready to resume trade talks with the United States. Trump terminated talks this week over an anti-tariff advertisement issued by Ontario's provincial government.
The United States has halted all trade negotiations with Canada. Donald Trump announced the decision in response to a Canadian ad criticising US tariffs. In a post on Truth Social on Thursday night, Trump claimed that the advertisement, which shows Reagan, a fellow Republican, speaking negatively about tariffs as an economic policy, was fake. Trump also said the advertisement was aimed at influencing US courts. In the advertisement, audio and video from a 1987 Ronald Reagan speech are used to argue that tariffs harm workers and businesses. Reagan says in the advert, when someone says, let's impose tariffs on foreign imports, it looks like they're doing the patriotic thing by protecting American products and jobs. And sometimes for a short while it works, but only for a short time.
And sometimes for a short while it works, but only for a short time.
The Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute condemned the ad, saying it misrepresents Reagan's original remarks and was used without permission.
Former members of Parliament and
$75 million.
Ontario Premier Doug Ford, who spearheaded the advertisements, initially defended the campaign, saying Canada and the United States are allies and that Reagan himself opposed tariffs. His government spent about $54 million for the ads to run across major US networks. But by Friday, Ford reversed course. He said company would pause the campaign so that trade talks between the US and Canada could move forward.
With us, as you know, just a few days ago, he won a very big election in Canada.
Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney did not let the move go unanswered. He said his government remains prepared to return to the table as soon as Washington is willing to talk.
and we stand ready to pick up on that progress and build on that progress when the Americans are ready to have those discussions, because it will be for the benefit of workers in the United States, workers in Canada, and families in both of our countries. Now, what we can control, absolutely, is how we build here at home.
However, US President Donald Trump said on Friday he has no intention to meet with Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney during the ASEAN summit in Kuala Lumpur. This marks the second time Trump has pulled the plug on trade talks with Canada. From steep tariffs and fentanyl disputes to offhand annexation threats, the move underscores just how unpredictable and tense US-Canada relations have become.
Leaders of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations and their dialogue partners, including US President Donald Trump, are set to meet in the Malaysian capital of Kuala Lumpur. On Saturday, Brazilian President Lula meets Malaysia's Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim on the sidelines of the 47th ASEAN Summit. Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng and top trade negotiator Li Chenggang also arrived on Saturday at a venue in Kuala Lumpur for trade talks between the United States and China. Alongside talks, Malaysian authorities ramped up security measures in Kuala Lumpur on Saturday as the city's usually bustling centre fell quiet amid a visible increase in police presence ahead of the summit. The meeting comes as the region faces renewed trade frictions, security concerns and questions about ASEAN's growing role. Let's take a look at what we can expect.
US President Donald Trump will join world leaders in Kuala Lumpur this weekend for the Association of Southeast Asian Nations Summit, running from October 26th to 28th. The event gathers Southeast Asia's 10 member states and their dialogue partners to discuss trade, security, and regional stability. Founded in 1967 during the Cold War, ASEAN was created to promote peace and cooperation among its neighbors. Over the decades, it has become a central player in Asia's diplomacy, helping its members manage disputes and attract investment. This year, Malaysia holds the chair and will formally welcome Timor-Leste as ASEAN's 11th member, ending a decade-long accession process. Trump will attend alongside Chinese Premier Li Qiang, Japan's new Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi, and Australian leader Anthony Albanese. The gathering comes as Washington and Beijing hold parallel trade talks in Malaysia over rare earth exports, a sign of a renewed strain between the world's two largest economies. Regional security will also feature prominently. Thailand and Cambodia are expected to sign a broader truce after deadly border clashes in July. A ceasefire partly brokered by Trump and Malaysia's Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim. The summit will also host a session of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, the world's largest trade bloc, covering a third of global GDP. Leaders will consider new members and ways to improve trade flows.
Now, Palestinian factions meeting in Cairo have reaffirmed support for the Gaza ceasefire and demanded a full Israeli withdrawal from the enclave. In a joint statement, they called for Gaza's administration to be handed to a temporary committee of independent technocrats and urged the creation of an international body to oversee reconstruction. The factions also stressed unity within the Palestinian political system and condemned Israeli annexation or displacement in Gaza, the West Bank and Jerusalem. Egypt brokered the current truce, which both Israel and Hamas have accused each other of violating. Now, here to discuss this is political analyst Enrique Cosero joining us from Madrid. Enrique, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, firstly, what's the key significance of Palestinian factions presenting a unified political position at this moment, particularly on governance and post-war planning?
Right now, it could be two things, and they're not expel one of another. I mean, they can make a cohabitation. One of those is that Hamas is the great loser of these negotiations, and the great loser of the truce that Donald Trump has put in place. So that means that there is room for power for any other. I don't know how to call it, if you want to call it tribe or if you want to call it group, whatever. And the other thing is that just along with this room for power, there is a race for trying to demonstrate who is willing to go along with the truce and to go along with the ceasefire and to go along with the stabilization of the area, of the zone of Palestinian. And I mean, this is like the Highlander movie. There only could be there are only one that can last forever, and it's not going to last forever. But at the same time, we got this situation in which all these groups, all these tribes, or just some of them could unstabilize the situation and can create some risk and being sort of a rogue group in order to not reaching the goal of the agreements. So we are having these two different situations, and all of them goes into the same point, which is power. Who is going to rule Palestine for the next years? And not only trying to make Palestine a stabilized and a very peaceful place, but also on the other side we can reach people that still wants to fight in order to prove that they got the power and prove that they can suppose a threat to Israel.
Okay, so a technocratic interim authority for Gaza sounds like a stabilizing option, but who would select these technocrats, and would all factions actually accept their authority?
Probably the first and foremost steering role for choosing the technocratic government is going to be Donald Trump, and of course Witkoff, Jared Kushner, all these people. Probably they're gonna show a list to Israel, and the same list is gonna be passed to the Palestinian Authority or Hamas or whoever is in charge in that moment. And but probably Donald Trump and the American government is going to push really hard in order to establish that list as a technocratic government for Palestine. So I think right now is Donald Trump the one who's ruling the place. Netanyahu can't do much in an independent way in order to not losing the friendship of Donald Trump, and the Palestinians I think they got no choice.
Okay, Enrique, here when talking about rebuilding and reconstruction, I just want to talk about Turkey's potential role here. Turkey has long stood by Palestine and always been one of the countries to step up efforts to bring in much needed aid and to try and bring an end to the Palestinian conflict that we've been witnessing. But now we know that Israel is very much against Turkey wanting to have any role in the reconstruction, rebuilding, and also again providing aid in the enclave. And the buck stops with Trump, as you very well articulated earlier. How do you think the role of the international community wanting to have a play in the reconstruction and rebuilding will unfold in the upcoming days, because Israel is so against anybody else coming in to help Palestine?
Okay, let's gonna split that situation you just proposed. Turkey, first and foremost, Turkey is a country that belongs to NATO, which is Turkey belongs to the Occidental, to the Western Conference of Allies in order to defend each other, right? Turkey is playing now a very ambitious role, because he is involved. It's involved not only in the Israel-Palestinian conflict, in the Gaza conflict, but also in the Ukrainian-Russia conflict. And in the last one, Turkey is playing a very important role, because Russia has Crimea. Russia wants the Donbass in order to have a corridor from Russia to Crimea, and having just one country to talk about having Russian exit to the Mediterranean. And that country is Turkey. Turkey right now plays a force role, I think, a very powerful role that Egypt was playing maybe 30, 40 years ago. But right now, Egypt just does, okay, I raise my hands, this is it. I don't want to be really involved in this situation, and Turkey wants that. Turkey, Erdogan, they want to be a very determined role in the area, not only with Russia and Ukraine, but also with Israel. And Israel is not, I don't think Israel is very glad with that situation. I don't think anybody in the Netanyahu government is jumping of joyful, considering that Turkey is a really strong militarized country. as I said before, Turkey belongs to the NATO. So NATO has to defend or try to protect Turkish interests whenever some sort of threat comes out from anywhere. So it's sort of a very big challenge to Israel to give that sort of power to another country, which could become a very, very powerful rival to Israel in the next years, and becoming this from a conflict with the Palestinians.
Okay. Enrique, just a quick roundup. This will be my last question. The demand for a full Israeli withdrawal is central, but given the current Israeli leadership stance, how likely is such a concession in the near term?
I don't think it's going to be easy. I think Israel is going to fight with all his strength in order to not cede any other part, or just to enlarge the terms of agreement. And it's quite simple, because as much Israel is controlling borders, countries, areas, zones, and neighbors, the safest they're going to be, and the safest they're going to feel themselves. So I don't think that is going to be a piece of cake in order to reach an agreement.
Okay. Enrique, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate your time and your insight.
Thank you.
France is once again on the brink of a government collapse as the Socialist Party threatens a no-confidence vote unless the so-called Zucman tax on the super-rich is included in next year's budget. Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu has urged Parliament to support the fiscal plan, warning that political instability could endanger France's economic recovery and its leadership role in Europe. Our Anita Sharma has more.
Welcome to This Day in Europe, where France again faces the threat of governmental collapse. The Socialist Party, which holds a swing position in the hung parliament, threatens to trigger a no-confidence motion Monday unless the minority government commits to, quote, fiscal justice, which includes a new tax on the super rich. The so-called Zucman tax entails a 2% annual levy on fortunes above 100 million euros. Socialist Party leader Olivier Faure warns that if the tax is not in the 2026 state budget, his party will vote against the government. Speaking at the National Assembly in Paris today, Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu acknowledged that the budget presented by the government is imperfect, but he asked members to not compromise the future of the country. He promised to cut the deficit by 0.4% year over year from the current 5.4% and said it, quote, must return to below 5% next year. He also pointed to a bill combating tax and social security fraud so the state can, quote, recover money from those who commit fraud or abuse. For military spending, Lecornu proposed hiking the budget by 6.7 billion euros to, quote, guarantee peace for ourselves and our continent. Since last year's legislative election produced a fractured assembly, President Emmanuel Macron's administration survived through maneuvers and concessions, lacking a stable base. The socialist threat to topple the government proves how fragile today's French executive is. While the party's proposed tax on billionaires could help the French economy, Macron's centrist coalition worries about the economic implications of scaring off high net worth individuals and investment. Many high-profile billionaires have already threatened to leave France if the Zucman tax becomes a reality. This may seem like an internal French drama, but the implications extend beyond the country's borders. A government collapse, or a deeply weakened one, would undermine France's ability to lead EU initiatives from defense to climate to economic reform. As for investor confidence in markets, the country already faces pressure with its credit rating. The examination of the revenue portion of the budget starts today in the National Assembly chamber. We, of course, will follow these developments very closely for you. The clock is certainly ticking as members of Parliament now have less than 2 months to find a compromise, with Monday a key make-or-break day for the minority government. For A News, I'm Anita Sharma in Arnhem, Netherlands.
Negotiators from Pakistan and Afghanistan are meeting in Istanbul today in a bid to stop the recent deadly border clashes and work toward a lasting ceasefire. Islamabad accuses Kabul of allowing militant groups to operate along the frontier, allegations the Afghan Taliban leadership denies. Can these talks deliver genuine de-escalation or just another temporary pause? Joining me to discuss is Ali Latifi, Asia editor in the New Humanitarian from Kabul, Afghanistan. Ali, thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Now, to begin with, can you give us the broader context behind these latest clashes? What triggered this escalation and how serious is the situation on the ground now?
The escalation began about 2 weeks ago when Pakistan started to attack Afghan soil again. It started out near the Durand line in Paktika province, which unfortunately that's not rare. Over the last several years, Pakistan has essentially been attacking the areas between the near the separation between Afghanistan and Pakistan. But 2 weeks ago, they also started attacking inside Kabul itself, including two very highly residential areas of the center of the capital. In fact, I was just talking to someone today who said that she knew one of the victims of one of the bombings carried out by Pakistan on the 15th of October. He just had essentially a cart where he was selling goods on the streets. He posed no threat to anyone. The claim was that in that neighborhood there was some kind of military infrastructure, but as we see, it was ordinary people who were subject to these bombings and these attacks. And so that's really what's led to the Islamic Emirate government in Kabul responding along the Durand line, trying to take out Pakistani outposts that they say have breached their territory, Pakistani soldiers that they say have gotten too close to their territory. And they vowed that if ever there is any sort of aggression or any attack on their sovereignty, they will respond just as they would if it was NATO doing this or a European power doing this or any other foreign government or body essentially infringing on their sovereignty as they see it.
Now, Pakistan has long accused the Afghan Taliban of harbouring groups it considers terrorist organisations, and Kabul rejects this. So where does the truth lie in these conflicting narratives?
I mean, the problem is that this is unfortunately a common issue in the region. Iran blames Pakistan, Pakistan blames Iran, Afghanistan blames Pakistan, Pakistan blames Afghanistan, India blames Pakistan, Pakistan blames India. It's all of this is going back and forth. But the real issue is that Pakistan has massive issues of its own. If it has an issue with the TTP, with the Pakistani Taliban, if it has an issue with the BLA, the Baluch Liberation Army that essentially wants a separate state of its own, that really has to do with either their military tactics in Baluchistan and in the tribal areas, and in terms of how they treat their Pashtun and Baluch populations, which has been an issue in Pakistan for decades now. And as people have said repeatedly, it's not just armed groups that are raising these issues, it's also protest movements, it's also political movements that are raising these issues as well. So really, the truth is that Pakistan has these internal issues to deal with.
Okay, Ali, is Afghanistan harbouring these groups or not? What's your opinion there?
There's no proof of that. So if Pakistan wants to come out with the proof, they went to the United Nations and said that they have solid proof. Prove it, because they said that on October 9th, if I remember correctly, on the evening of October 9th, that they killed the TTP leader in Kabul. An hour later, he sent out a voice message saying, "I'm fine. I'm on Pakistani territory." So what did they attack?
Okay.
So if Pakistan wants to make these claims, then they have to come up with the proof.
Okay, let's talk about the negotiations now, Ali. They aim to not only halt the violence, but to create a framework for longer-term border security. What concrete outcomes would you expect or hope to see from the Istanbul talks?
I mean, the things that the government of Afghanistan is saying, like one thing that they want is a halt to the deportation of Afghans in Pakistan, which has been a major issue since 2023. The Pakistani side wants basically neither side to engage in any sorts of violent activity on either side of the Durand Line. And so what it really needs is a solid commitment from both sides, you know, for Pakistan say that we will no longer attack the Afghan side, and the Afghan side to say we will no longer respond in kind, and to prove, for either side to prove, you know, because Afghanistan also claims that Pakistan is harboring so-called Daesh forces. So for either side to prove that they have no connection to these groups. Really what needs to happen is for them to come to an agreement and to an understanding and to come up with real concrete ways to prove that they are abiding by these things. Because so far all we have are statements.
All right, Ali, lastly, if this diplomatic effort fails, what are the risks for wider regional instability? And could we see Pakistan take more forceful measures along the border? And what does it mean for innocent civilians that are always impacted?
It has a lot of impacts. It would have economic impacts because, you know, as we saw, checkpoints across the Durand Line where trucks from either side go in and out were stopped for days at a time. That has a massive economic impact. It has an impact on healthcare services for people trying to go to Pakistan for healthcare, and obviously for civilians, because civilians will always get caught in the crossfire, especially whether that's in the more remote areas near the Durand Line or in urban areas like Kabul and say Islamabad, if that were ever to happen. And really, it's an unneeded stress for both governments. Both governments have massive issues that they need to deal with. The Afghan government needs to deal with legitimacy and earning more recognition around the world and providing, you know, for its people during its amidst its struggling economy. And Pakistan also has massive economic problems, and as I said earlier, it has huge problems with its Baluch and Pashtun populations. So this is just a violent distraction that is going to keep both countries away from the really pressing issues that they need to deal with for their populations.
Okay, Ali, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your insight. The European Union is deepening its engagement in Central Asia and the Caucasus, seeking to boost transport and trade links with the region. At a recent meeting in Luxembourg, EU ministers discussed new investments in the Trans-Caspian international transport route. Our correspondent Fariza Kalimurzina reports from Almaty.
The European Union is strengthening its focus on Central Asia and the Caucasus. Following the recent meeting of ministers in Luxembourg, Brussels is ready to step up its involvement in developing the Middle Corridor, a route connecting China and Europe through the Caspian and Black Seas. This route is already being used for transport bypassing Russia, and now the EU aims to expand infrastructure and increase trade flows. Brussels is allocating about 3 billion euros for the development of the route. In total, the European Union plans to invest up to 12 billion euros in transport and energy projects across the region in the coming years. Kazakhstan plays a special role in this process. The European Bank for Reconstruction and Development has allocated 35 million euros to modernize the port of Aktau, which will become an important link in the Middle Corridor. For the European Union, this is not only an economic project, but also a way to strengthen its political presence in a region traditionally dominated by Russia and China. Brussels hopes that the new routes will help Central Asian and Caucasus countries diversify their ties and reduce dependence on major neighbors. For the EU, this is more than an economic project, but Brussels faces a difficult task, competing with the well-established influence of Moscow and Beijing. China remains the region's largest trading partner, and Russia's political presence is still tangible. Fariza Kalimurzina, Almaty, A News.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen welcomed Uzbek President Shavkat Mirziyoyev to Brussels as the two sides signed an enhanced partnership and cooperation agreement, marking a new phase in EU-Uzbek relations. The deal aims to deepen political dialogue and cooperation on trade, investment, research, sustainable development and intellectual property, reinforcing the EU's long-standing commitment to Central Asia. The EU is Uzbekistan's third largest trading partner. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has said that Moscow welcomes Iran's proposal to host the upcoming Caspian Sea Summit in Tehran next year. The meeting aims to strengthen environmental and economic coordination among the 5 bordering states as they face shared challenges in the region. Correspondent Tura Shirliliu has more.
Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has expressed his country's agreement with the convention of the summit meeting of the Caspian Sea littoral states in Tehran on August 12, 2026. The date coincides the International Caspian Sea Day. Official IRNA news agency quoted Lavrov saying at the joint press conference with his Kazakh counterpart in Moscow on Thursday, during which he welcomed Tehran's proposal to host the event. The International Caspian Sea Day is an occasion observed by the 5 littoral states Azerbaijan, Iran, Kazakhstan, Russia and Turkmenistan. On this day, the Framework Convention for the Protection of the Caspian Sea and the Environment from Pollution was signed in Tehran and came into force. As the largest inland body of water, accounting for about 44% of the total lake waters of the world, the Caspian Sea is facing environmental challenges, including shrinking water level, industrial pollution due to increasing oil exploration, and endangered wildlife. To overcome these challenges, the 5 littoral states have been required to protect the sea's ecosystem in this geopolitically and geoeconomically strategic transit route of Eurasia. In the latest development, Iran's ambassador to Russia, Kazem Jalali, was quoted saying that the first ever conference of governor generals of the Caspian Sea littoral provinces will convene in the northern Gilan province of Iran in November. Speaking on the sidelines of the provincial diplomacy conference in northeastern city of Mashhad, he also said that Tehran has been in contact with other Caspian Sea capitals to secure their agreements to convention of the summit in Iran. According to Jalali, it's expected that Russian President Vladimir Putin participates in the Caspian Summit next year in Tehran. Turat Shiralilu, Tehran, A News.
Baku has become the center of international legal dialogue as the Azerbaijan Arbitration Days have officially opened. The event brings together hundreds of legal experts and officials to discuss the future of fair and transparent dispute resolution.
Azerbaijan Arbitration Days 2025 has officially kicked off in Baku, bringing together more than 600 participants, including over 70 leading lawyers, experts and government officials.
The main aim of the forum is to facilitate the exchange of professional experience in the field of arbitration, strengthen cooperation between legal practitioners from the public and private sectors, and create a dynamic platform for discussing the development of arbitration in Azerbaijan.
During the event, speakers underlined that in a democratic society, justice cannot be concentrated in a single institution. Courts and arbitration bodies are not rivals, but partners in ensuring justice.
Courts and arbitration are not opponents. They are partners in justice. Each plays a different role, but both serve to the same purpose: to resolve disputes fairly and to protect rights effectively. As the saying goes, arbitration is not an escape from justice. It's a different path leading to the same destination.
Speakers emphasised that alongside the country's economic growth, business and investment relations are becoming increasingly complex, which heightens the need for effective arbitration mechanisms.
Azerbaijan, since its independence, has attracted significant investment into various areas of its economy, and there have been surely returned investments. We had significant returns from those investments, but just like business generates money, businesses also generate disputes.
International arena.
As part of the event, the official opening ceremony of the Baku Arbitration Centre was held. The centre will operate as a permanent arbitration institution. Its key functions include managing arbitration proceedings, appointing arbitrators and reviewing objections against them, organising documentation, as well as administering arbitration fees and other related costs. Organisers of the event noted that the newly established centre will contribute to the fair and transparent delivery of arbitration services, while also fostering stronger local and international cooperation in this field.
International arbitration is an alternative way to resolve commercial disputes, investment disputes. It is actually a very big part of international justice. When parties choose in their contract to resolve their dispute not in a state court but in arbitral tribunal, they put an arbitration clause in their contract. It means that when a dispute arises, these parties cannot go to state court, they have to go to arbitration.
The launch of the Baku Arbitration Centre marks a new stage in the development of fair, transparent and internationally standardised dispute resolution mechanisms in Azerbaijan. The event also featured panel discussions on the role of arbitration in the legal system, the efficient resolution of disputes and strengthening business confidence.
Thank you for joining me. That's your news update for now. Make sure you stay tuned to A News for more.